it's Quiana Ellison, and this is Call Me Blackity Black. The reason why we started this podcast, it may seem, well, why did this podcast even come to be? This just seems a little random. Well, with all the protests and all the marches happening because of police brutality and just the treatment of Black people historically and currently, I realized a lot of people don't really understand what Black is. Well, there's a lot of texts and there's a lot of books, but there's not a lot of people showing people their experience, personally, hands-on. So this podcast is literally created just so I can be your Black auntie and teach you, just the way I was taught on being Black. I want to teach you guys how it really is to learn what Black is. So this is Call Me Blackity Black. It's an educational podcast, but life experiences and just going down in the history and current events of what being Black in America is. You know, with everything going on, I've realized that a lot of people don't understand what Black is or how Black is an experience, a culture, an ethnic group. So here's a nice little podcast just to help you guys understand what I understand as a Black person. So I actually have a funny little story, and it kind of goes like, when I realized I wasn't white, but I knew I was Black. Growing up, I didn't really have a definitive moment when I realized that I was Black. I knew I was Black. I just didn't really know I wasn't white. I feel like the media really played a role in the way I viewed my Blackness, because the Black people I saw on TV really had like limited roles, because you know how it is. You either play like the maid or the real girlfriend, or like, you know what I mean? And it just didn't represent who I was as a person. So it was really hard for me to connect with the Black people I did see on TV. Because of that, I knew I was Black because people told me I was Black. My parents are Black. My grandparents are Black. My neighborhood, my neighbors, everybody around me were Black. But because I couldn't connect with the people in their Blackness, my Blackness didn't seem Black. It seemed white. So there was no real reason for me to ever think I was white, but I did. I did think I was white. Because when I was about like 6 or 8, I had an art class. And in this art class, we had to paint our self-portraits. Normally, when you paint a self-portrait, you look in the mirror and you paint exactly what you see. I decided to do the opposite of that. We get into class and I give myself some porcelain skin, long blonde hair, and piercing blue eyes. And my teacher, she was going around making her rounds, and she so happened to stop by my table and saw my self-portrait. And she crouched down at me and she looked and said, Quiana, who's that? And I said, me, of course, it's a self-portrait. She said, oh, okay, it looks nice. Let's try again, but with some different colors. And I was like, fam, let's go. So she gave me brown crayons to replace all the yellow and the whites that I drew for myself. And I was confused because I was like, you told me to draw myself, but you just took myself away from me. But I ain't complaining because I was a child, she was an adult. You just go with the flow. So she sits down with me, she hands me a mirror, and she passed me those brown crayons, and we worked from there, and we draw a new self-portrait. But she asked if she could keep my original. And I said, sure, you're the art teacher. You do the art. Go on ahead. So school goes out. We already drew the new self-portrait. She kept the original. All is dandy. So her mom comes and picks me up, and she was pretty good friends with the art teacher. So when she came and picked me up, they ran into each other, and they started talking. And then in the middle of their conversation, I'm just sitting there chilling. The art teacher comes, pulls out my original portrait, and shows it to my mom. And my mom stops. She looks, she sees the white woman that I painted, and she said, oh, Quiana, did you make that? That's so nice. And the art teacher interrupts her and says, that's her self-portrait. And my mom cocks her head to the right, looks down at me with eyes bugging out her head and goes, is that your self-portrait? And I just look at her, because I'm not going to answer, because of course we just realized that, right? Then my art teacher proceeds to pull out my new self-portrait with the brown crayon. My mom was like, so Quiana, which one is your self-portrait? Of course, I point out my original one, the one I drew when I looked in the mirror. So my mom and the art teacher, they laughed to each other, and they were like, oh, Quiana, no. You are Black. Black people typically don't look like what you drew, and if they did, that's not your self-portrait either way. The brown one is yours. And they just laughed it off, and I'm just sitting there like a chunk of me was taken away that day, because I had to realize that I wasn't also white. A lot of that seems confusing, like, well, how could you ever think that you were white if you grew up Black? Well, the real question is, what makes a person Black? To the definition, there's this thing called the African diaspora, and that's basically what makes a person Black by definition. So the African diaspora is just a term used to talk about the mass dispersion of people from Africa. So that includes people from the Caribbean, and all people who are descended from West Africa and Central Africa mainly. So it's pretty much as a chunk. You think, oh, these people are descendants of Africans, therefore they are Black. But it's not as simple as that. Because being Black, the phrase being Black, is just more than how you appear and what you know or what the world knows about you. It's an experience, and it's part of your culture. So for me, being Black is anyone at any amount who has Black ancestry, who has lineage from Africa. But there's also a twist. Blackness is a culture and an ethnic group. Being Black and not being familiar with the culture can get your Black card revoked. But just like being not Black and knowing a lot about the culture can have you at every barbecue that we ever host. So you can be Black by merit. How can you be Black and not be Black? And how can you be Black and not be Black? It kind of makes no sense if you think about it just linearly. If you think about it in multiple different ways, you think, oh, well, you can be culturally Black and not actually be ethnically Black. And you can also be ethnically Black and know nothing about being Black at all and get your card revoked very quickly. But we'll talk about getting your Black card revoked on a different day. But it comes down like, well, what does this all have to do with you being white? Like, where does this all come down to? We have to understand a little bit of Black history and a little bit of terms used with Black people before I can even get into that. We understand you can be culturally Black. You can also be ethnically Black. I'm both. I'm culturally Black and I'm ethnically Black. I'm Black. I'm Blackity Black. I'm as Black as they come. When you think about it, some words you probably have heard. And sensitive word usage, if you are sensitive, this is just the words that have been given to Black people. So reevaluate how you feel sensitive to words that don't affect you personally. Some good words and some bad words. So there's a debate versus light skin versus dark skin, red bone, good hair or bad hair, half-baked, Nubian queen, nigger or nigga, coon, Uncle Tom, and the list goes on. There are many terms. But all these terms come from slavery and the ownership of Black bodies. These terms were the anti-whiteness of Black people. So everything that was not white gave us terms such as this, such as Uncle Tom. It's basically a Black person who wants to be white so badly that they deny every part of being Black. Same as being a coon. So you're just trying to be white as badly as possible, so you denounce everything about being Black. With realizing that you are Black, you will get your card revoked if you are one of the two. And all of that comes with the hierarchy of being Black. House slave versus field slave. That's light skin versus dark skin in modern day terms. And you see where lighter-skinned black people back in the day who represented white people more closely are treated more highly. And even though it may not be as direct as being the house servant of the master, you do see it reflected within beauty and media, but we'll talk about that in a different day. So again, what does this have to do with me being white? Well, let me tell you what it has to do with me being white. Growing up, even though I'm as black as they come, I am not physically as black as they come. Growing up fairer than the mass majority of black people with red hair is not very black. So when black kids saw me, they thought, oh, that's not black. That's definitely not black. My grandma don't look like her. My mom don't look like her. I don't look like her. How could she be black? And I'm seeing her just like you were black. You got black parents. I got black parents. But it wasn't as easy as that. Because I was lighter skinned and I didn't act like a black person. I didn't sound like a black person. I didn't look like a black person. I had to be white. So they made fun of me for being white, or half white, at least. Even though I knew when I went home, I had black grandparents, black siblings, black parents. And they also made fun of me for being albino. And they also made fun of me for being mixed and adopted. And I'm neither one of those. And none of those things are bad. They just aren't me. And that's what makes it confusing. Because culturally, I grew up black. Ethnically, I grew up black. But just like with the media, when I looked around at my peers and I looked around at my friend groups, I noticed that my blackness didn't fit within the mold. And that caused me to believe that I must be white, because white people represent who I am more. Therefore, I am white. And I found out about 6 years old that that's not how life works. That's not how apples are picked from the tree. Being black, I'm proud to be black. I love being black. Ethnically, culturally, we got good food. We can talk about all that other good stuff on a different day. But why did being white, in lack of being white, hurt me so badly? Well, for me, I would say not being white goes back to playing into the hierarchy. Because I was lighter skinned, I got praise. But I didn't get praise for my blackness. I got praise for my lack of blackness, which made me closer to being white. And because of that, I see how white people are treated. I know how white people are treated. I want that. I want to be treated as nicely as white people. So if I am also white, I am also treated nicely. That's not how life turns out. But, you realize at a young age when you're black, what black really is and what it really comes with. And I realized it came with confusion for the most part, because I wasn't black. But I am black. I'm black as they come, as I've already stated. But being white hurt me in a way that being black never did. And a lot of people ask, well, are you black? Are you African American? Are you a Negro? I honestly do not care, because none of those terms came from black people anyway. We didn't give ourselves these names. So you can call me black. I'm proud to be black. When I was in the 60s, I was proud to be a Negro. Don't call me colored, though, because we all colored. That ain't right. But that's my opinion. But African American, I feel like that's more exclusive. I'm physically not from Africa, but my lineage is. I don't have any cultural direction to Africa except for what I know based off of slavery. So it's hard. It's a hard one because I don't have direct lineage like someone from Nigeria, like second generation, first generation. But at the end of the day, if you call me African American, I'm not coming down at your throat. And I feel like most black people could come to a consensus. And also, not every black person is American. So don't go to someone who's from England and say, are you African American? Because you sound a little silly. Because they are black. And it's just easier to say black. It's an inclusive term for black people of all kinds, of all of the African diaspora. Until you know, just call us black. And I'm pretty sure no one's going to come at your head if you do so. And if they do, apologize. That's it. That was my journey to understanding how Blackity Black I was and how I have identified with being Black and not white, because I'm not white. But if you are white, good to you. Be proud to be white. Just know that if you are white and you're not Black, also acknowledge that too. Just like I acknowledge that I was not white, but I am just Black. Blackity Black. As Black as they come. That concludes episode 1 of Call Me Blackity Black. I hope you enjoyed or learned something new today. We drop a new podcast on the first Tuesday of every month, and on the third Tuesday, we do a live Q&A session on Instagram. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media. Thank you for tuning in, and stay Black, y'all.